So, Brett, you were very vocal about this when Saturday they originally closed the grandstands for fans. And then Ben Kennedy, they did the right thing. They opened the grandstands up, made it free. Obviously, the buzz on Twitter was how empty the grandstands were. Like, what do you think the penalty is, when fans realizing, like, hey, we can come for free, watch the race on Saturday? Why didn't they show up?
That's a great question, and we boast that LA is our number one market, and if we can't get a free ticket to people, I mean Casey, that's going to be the $1 million question for me. That's why I said what I said a minute ago. We saw some of the vibe from year one to year two go down. I know ticket sales were down this year. I've heard they were down even more. Obviously, we didn't get to see that on Sunday because we didn't race on the right day. But I just think it's run its course here. I think if the LA market is this important to us, as NASCAR says it is, then run a race that is not an exhibition race. Run a true race. Because listen, man, Fontana, we sold out that place. And then we went through a run where nobody was there. And then at the end of Fontana's lifespan, people were back coming to the racetrack. I mean, we would get in traffic. We would stand in line at the elevators. And for whatever reason, this LA market buzz is gone. And I don't know how you get it back. But if LA is so important, we got to figure out a way to have a race that means something. We can't have, the colleague racing teams and Joe Gibbs racing teams. And listen, RFK, the last couple of years, like, that's a really long ways to go to not even have a chance to race. And teams are not selling this for a premium dollar. This is not a big inventory item where sponsors are dying to come be a part of this. Most of the sponsorship that you see on these cars for this race are tied to a bigger package that they're buying, where they're buying 10 or 12 cup primaries and they get the Clash, season kickoff as part of the deal. A lot of teams lose a lot of money to go out there to not even get a chance to race. I'm not for it. I think you should know in advance what's going to set you up to make the race. And in this situation, they didn't. They got out there and it completely changed. But if you're a chartered member, you're required to go to this race. You cannot not go. So you basically have to sign up to lose $50,000 to $100,000 per team. That's a lot of money.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a long way to go to have a race like that where there's so many people going home. I've always been a big fan of the Clash being at Daytona and it being strictly an exclusive event. You either win a pole or you're a past winner. If you're a past winner, I think those guys were in it for their entirety of their driving career. But man, it was like something that you earned. There was guys, I remember hearing some drivers talk about it, like it meant something to them if you were in the Clash. Yeah. Just a little bit of, because you did something to earn it.
You would get out, see these guys get out of the car on pit road after their qualifying lap and boast about, hey, well, now we're locked into Clash for next year. The only problem I have with Daytona is, for one, this package sucks at plate races. Or drafting tracks, whatever the hell you want to call them now.
I enjoy it.
Two, the last races at the Clash sucked at Daytona. But I think that's because we had pit stops. Because everybody kind of rode around to the pit stop. Then we all pit in different groups, came out, and we were all spread out. The race got spread out, and unless you got a late caution, it never really got racy. So I think if you, I'm all about like
race,
ideally, ideally, I think perfect, world, the Clash is at Daytona with a package that works, and it's a 25 lap race. It's just because there's no reason to have a Clash where we just ride around forever. You know what I mean? Because that's what it got to. You'd ride around single file to the pit stop. Yep. We'd all pit. Then the fuel would be spread out. And then if we didn't get a caution, that's how it ran.
There has to be urgency.
Yeah. So you got to make it, just make it a 25 lap dash where these guys can't just ride around and hope to survive. And unfortunately, we need a better package because I don't think it's packed. Right now you're not going to do anything. It's going to get too wide.
I would sacrifice. I would sacrifice the package being where it's at right now and still have the Clash there, because these guys are still good enough that you're still going to see the best of the best go out there and race. I'd rather see that than I would a pit stop race or anything else, or a Clash at LA or something.
I just disagree that. I think that if we had a 25-lap Clash now, the front row wouldn't change the whole time unless we got cautions or pit stops.
See, I think it would change a little. I think
we can't get a third line going. So how do you break them two up?
But with a short race, I do think things will be a little bit. There'll be more urgency to get there, so you can see a third line. We saw a third line
The only
little bit at some other tracks.
The only time we see a third line at these plate races now is when people are saving fuel. That's the only time we see a third line come into play. At the end of that race last year, when everybody was gun-ho, I made the mistake of trying at Daytona 2. I made the mistake of, here comes a little top line coming. I got up like we normally would, and every year passed when the package was a little better, and normally that line would go. Once everybody starts pushing and then bottom two lanes, the third lane cannot, it can't, maintain its distance with the top bottom two.
I would rather deal with that than I would any of the other options that you have.
That racing was, I don't know that like you said, you can't go across
can't
go across the country and send 13 cars home. There's got to be a better plan there, or some kind of. Obviously, they're in a bind this week, but the last chance race, I don't know, whatever. But I agree that you can't.
You can't convince me that you couldn't make time for a 50-lap last chance qualifier race, and the caution laps count, and then you go out there with the guys that didn't make it and giving them opportunity to actually get a race in their equipment before the season starts, because that's what everybody else is getting. But back to you guys' point, the thing that used to really get me excited about the Clash in Daytona is it got me excited for the Daytona 500, whether I was working with a driver that was in that race or not in that race. We had gone down, we had practiced for the Daytona 500. We were going to qualify the next day, and we would watch the Clash on that Saturday night. And if you were a driver in that race, great. If you weren't, the drivers were standing on top of haulers or up on the spotter stand watching the race. And we were getting pumped up because we knew what was coming next week, the duels, the Daytona 500. I don't know that we successfully created a lot of buzz for the Daytona 500 by doing what we just did. And that was one of the things that was going through my mind sitting at that bar is, man, I got excited about going to L.A. I got excited about working at the L.A. Coliseum. We watched a complete show that year. Me and Freddie and our friend Doug, we were elbowing each other going, watch this guy. He's getting ready to dive bomb this guy and spin him out. It was a complete disaster. But I think it's just run its course 3 years later, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And to me, man, you're trying to get a new fan. We're going to go to Mexico City, where we've already been, or Guadalajara. I really hope that rumor that Jeff Gluck and Bianchi put out there was not true, because, man, I think that is the exact opposite way we need to be going.
Yeah, I think two things, like going back to your 50-lap LCQ idea. In theory, yes, it's perfect. You could probably have squeezed it in, but God forbid if we did that, and that, because it was raining by the time I got to the airport.
Oh, yeah.
And that's an hour later because I've futzed around afterwards. But if, God forbid, we run that 50-lapper and then we don't get the race in, now we'd be the first ones on here going, you guys are the biggest idiots in the world because we should have just got the race in. Oh, well, too bad you didn't make it. But to your other point about the Clash, it also gave you an opportunity to know who was going to be the guys to beat that week. I feel like, you would see guys in the Clash and you go, oh, that guy's got speed. That there'd be times where people would talk about, is he going to run his Clash car in the 500 now or whatever, So, but that was just something else you'd lead into going, oh, look,
Yeah.
I remember the years Brad would win, all the damn Penske cars are good again, whatever. But yeah, I always loved the idea of starting the season in Daytona, whether it was 2 weeks where we used to go for 2 weeks, or even when they moved it back and we were only there for like a week with a Clash on Sunday and then leading into everything else during the week. But
I still think the exclusivity of the Clash being of the guys that have earned it, and even if there is a lot of fall leader, that's still going to be a race that we're going to watch. You know what I mean? Like Brett said,
TJ's right. TJ's 100% right. To get in the Clash, you had to win a pole the previous year, or you had to be a champion. To get into the All-Star race, you had to win a race or be a champion. And when we look back at those Clash lineups, that was guys literally hanging it out, doing everything they could to sit on a pole to be in that event. And then, Sprint got involved, TV got involved. We need the field to be bigger. Let's make everybody that made the chase last year, they automatically get a berth. Like we made it way too complicated. I said we go back to our origin and do exactly what TJ said. Make it exclusive, make it elite. You are either a pole sitter or a champion if you're in this race. All the rest of you guys, tough shit.